The internet is a strange and unsettling place, and with things like creepypastas circulating all over, it becomes stranger. Creepypastas are short and appalling horror stories born out of blogs, forums, and comment threads, blurring the lines between modern reality and urban legends. They almost feel real. They tap into our deepest, darkest fears and become a cultural phenomenon. Be it distorted childhood memories or haunted games, today we will discuss some of the most disturbing creepypastas that have captured the imagination of horror fans. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. 1. The Russian sleep experiment. Can you imagine a Soviet experiment so twisted that it feels like a nightmare? The Russian sleep experiment is exactly that. It's the story of 5 test subjects in the 1940s who were exposed to a gas-based sleep-inhibiting stimulant and kept awake for 15 days straight. This experiment was to test the limits of the human mind. The test subjects were all political prisoners from World War II, and they were kept in a sealed environment with constant monitoring of their oxygen level. These prisoners were provided with cots, toilets, running water, dried food, and books to keep them occupied, but not bedding. Initially, all seemed well, especially the first 5 days. The prisoners were even chatty since they were under the false impression that if they complied with the test and stayed awake for 30 days, they'd be set free. But it all started going downhill after that. Their conversations turned dark, and paranoia set in. Eventually, they stopped talking to each other and started whispering into the microphones, assuming that they could win over experimenters by turning against the others. The situation worsened after 9 days. One of the prisoners started to run along the enclosed chamber and scream continuously at the top of their lungs for 3 hours until they tore their vocal cords. What was surprising was that the other prisoners didn't react to this at all. This captivity also took a disgusting turn. Some prisoners began to tear off the pages of their book, smear the pages with their feces, and stick them in the glass wall of the chamber. Then it all stopped, even the whispers to the microphone. It was only the oxygen consumption inside the chamber that assured the experimenters that the subjects were still alive. Around the 14th day mark, the Russians decided to provoke the subjects in some way and hence announced that they would be opening the doors to test the microphones. But they were shocked to hear back a calm voice claiming that they no longer wanted to be free. When the experimenters finally opened the chambers on the 15th day, what they witnessed was a pure nightmare. 1 dead, 4 mutilated bodies inflicted with self-harm, 4 inches of water mixed with blood on the floor, and the most shocking, survivors begging to be kept awake with the gas rather than face the horror of sleep. The survivors, barely human, were taken for surgery, but anesthetics had no effect on them. They were fully conscious, even laughing as their own organs were handled. All the surviving test subjects wanted was to stay awake and go back to being sealed in a gas chamber, suggesting they had become something beyond human, something that didn't want to sleep ever. 2. Jeff the Killer. How afraid can you be of a shy teenager? Now that you've thought about your answer, let us change your mind. This is the story of Jeff, a shy 13-year-old teenager who suddenly found himself in isolation after moving to a new neighborhood and soon became the subject of bullying. When he tries to stand up to the bullies and stabs them, his brother takes the fall and gets caught and forced into juvie instead, and this becomes Jeff's unraveling. Soon he sinks into depression. Before you know it, the same bullies confront Jeff again at a party, and things escalate. The bullies smash vodka on his head and throw him through windows. But this time around, Jeff snaps. He becomes enraged and kills one of the bullies right in front of the adults, and a series of ghastly events follow, leading up to pouring bleach on himself and the bullies, until one of the bullies lights himself and Jeff on fire. The spilled vodka continues to burn Jeff's skin, while at the same time, the bleach continues to, well, bleach. His hair turns black, his skin turns pale white, and his lips turn a bloody shade of scarlet. Even though Jeff survives this horrific incident physically, after his discharge from the hospital, something inside him changes. He becomes deranged, and seeing his grotesque figure, he is not appalled. Rather, he wants more. So he carves out a smile with a knife. Think Joker. Next thing you know, he sets out on a killing spree, his first victims being his own parents. He begins sneaking into homes at night, and right before striking, he whispers his signature phrase, "Go to sleep." Over time, different versions of the story emerged. Some versions start with an acid attack during a bathtub cleaning accident in 2008. Others focus on the fire incident, different details, and the same grotesque transformation. To be honest, it's one of the more absurd stories on the internet, with the source still being unclear. Nonetheless, his eerie image and backstory spark trauma and rage. 3. Smile Dog. The internet is a weird and scary place, and stories like Smile Dog take it to another level. Smile Dog is one of the most infamous creepypasta stories that has circulated around the internet, centered around a single image, smile.jpg. This image file is of a supposedly demonic-looking, smiling husky with an impossibly sinister grin and glowing eyes. The only visible background in that image, as the victims recollect, is that of a beckoning human hand on the left side. A smiling husky doesn't sound too scary, right? Wait until you hear the accounts of those who have seen the image. When a person sees the image, they become plagued by the nightmare of this dog, where they are blackmailed to circulate the image file to even more people. These nightmares involve the person asking the dog what it wants, and the dog replying, "Spread the word." The lore goes that if you don't comply with the demands of the Smile Dog, then the image becomes even creepier, or it takes its original form and becomes a more powerful demonic entity. Even deleting or not viewing the file won't spare the receiver, and they would still encounter the same fate as long as they have received the file. But behold, do not test this dog's patience, since it might eventually manifest itself in the real world and make your life into a living hell. The origin of this story is unknown, and fortunately or unfortunately, this said image file could not be found anywhere on the internet apart from a few fakes. We live in a world where images and memes travel faster than light, so the idea of an image that can literally infect your mind feels disturbingly plausible. 4. Candle Cove. Candle Cove unfolds as a nostalgic horror story cleverly told through a thread on a fictional net nostalgia forum. That format instantly pulls you in. Adults swapping childhood memories of a weird, low-budget puppet show they watched in the early 1970s on local Channel 58. At first, it's all fun and games. Just some kids sailing to a magical pirate island where a young girl named Janice is friends with some marionette pirates. But it gets creepier. When the users of the forum began to reminisce, gory details came to light, like this character, Skin Taker, who dresses in the skins of children. They even recall an entire episode where Janice's puppets scream, flail, and cry along with some other characters like the laughingstock of Horace Horrible, which were clearly not suitable for kids. But hold on. There is more twist to come. When these users go on to ask their parents if they remember this show, they often come up with replies like, "When you said Candle Cove was on, there was only static on the screen." So basically, the children just had been watching nothing for 30 minutes every day. So why did the parents not find that weird or interfere? We'll never know. The thread just reframes everything. How can multiple people have the exact same memory of a show when that show never really existed in the first place? The nostalgia of childhood memories becomes unreliable. What people were recalling might have been a shared hallucination or something else entirely. A TV show that never existed, or that existed outside reality altogether. Weirdly enough, Candle Cove did make its real television debut in 2015 when Channel Zero decided to have a season based on this creepypasta. This featured the story of a child psychologist investigating the disappearance of his brother along with some other children. 5. The rake. Yet another horrifying creature born out of a horror forum is the rake. This legend started somewhere around 2005 on 4chan's bulletin board when an anonymous user invited contributors to build this new creature. The rake is supposed to be a supernatural creature that preys on people when they are asleep. It's often described as pale-skinned and completely hairless, either standing or crawling on all fours. Its limbs are unnaturally long, ending in razor-sharp claws like gardening tools. Victims describe hollow, soulless eyes that sometimes glow in the dark, and when it attacks, its mouth hinges open toward its neckline to reveal countless dull teeth. In some variations, the rake is also said to wear some kind of mask. The majority of the stories about the rake come from upstate New York during the early 2000s. People said the creature appeared at the edge of their beds, watching them in silence. Sometimes it whispered. Others claimed it stalked their homes over long periods, learning everything about its targets before striking or driving them to suicide. One chilling account involves a mother finding the creature at the foot of her bed. It fled only after her daughter was mortally injured. Her dying words, "He is the rake." On the way to the hospital, her husband crashed and died too. Months later, researchers pooled stories, uncovered long-lost logs dating back to the 1600s and 1800s, and discovered a 1964 suicide note where the victim claimed they cannot ever wake because of the rake. The rake continues living in shared horror, and the idea that beneath the pale figure is something we can't control still keeps people up at night. 6. Ben Drowned, a garage sale that changed a boy's life. This is the story of Jedusable, who bought an old copy of the famous Legend of Zelda game, Majora's Mask, from a garage sale only to discover that it's haunted. Jedusable shared his experience in 2010 in the form of real-time forum posts, diaries, and YouTube clips. The game apparently belonged to another guy, Ben, who had died in a drowning accident. As Jedusable starts playing the seemingly normal game, glitches begin to unfold, glitches that would not be possible otherwise. Sometimes, an odd dialogue would pop up like, "You shouldn't have done that," or some warped visuals. As Jedusable delves deeper and deeper into the game, this mysterious entity, Ben, begins to manipulate not only the game, but also the computer with activities like abruptly changing the wallpaper, speaking to Cleverbot, and even appearing in Jedusable's dreams. Was it actually Ben's ghost? Or something else entirely? We can never say for sure. But the entity eventually tricks the readers into downloading a file containing Ben from Jedusable's computer so it could break free and spread across the internet. Ben is not a typical evil entity to cause physical harm to any of the victims, but more like a meta-horror entity who takes pleasure in teasing and torturing Jedusable. The story paused for years before concluding its final arc in 2020, with a new player, Sarah, trying to free the souls of characters trapped in the game. 7. No End House. Imagine a haunted house so disturbing that no one ever makes it all the way through. And yet it beckons. Our next creepypasta story is that of No End House, which was first posted around 2010 by Brian Russell. According to the story, the narrator, David, becomes intrigued by a $500 prize for anyone who manages to reach the 9th and final room of a mysterious haunted attraction. Apparently, no one ever has, but Davis decided to try his luck anyway. The first room was laughably easy to pass, with some dollar store decorations and Halloween animatronics, but each successive room got more and more scary and difficult to pass. In the third room, David encountered some shadows, while his own disappeared. In the fourth room, he gets engulfed by darkness with the sounds of the forest and so on. He feels bugs crawling on his body when actually there are none. He sees mysterious entities, like a pale-skinned girl in a white dress and a hairy figure, and he even encounters the mutilated bodies of his parents in his house. In the 8th room, he meets his doppelganger, terrified in a rocking chair that the real David might kill him. But even though David manages to escape room 9 after shoving a knife into his doppelganger's chest, he could not escape. In the subsequent parts, 3 weeks after David vanished, his girlfriend Maggie received a chilling text. "No end, don't come, David." Worried, she contacts Peter, David's drug addict friend, who confirms David entered the no-end house and ventures into the house to rescue him. Unfortunately, she enters the same nightmarish loop as Dave. As it turns out, it was Peter behind all this. However, David seems to have returned after a turmoil and attempts to call 911, but realizes Maggie is still inside, so he races back to save her. He eventually meets Natalie, who turns out to be Peter's sister, and she tells David that it was, in fact, their house and that they were witches and wizards, and that Peter had caused all this by summoning demons. So, does David escape? Go find out. 8. Laughing Jack. A friend turned foe, an imaginary friend turned nightmare, Laughing Jack is all that and more. Laughing Jack was a colorful Jack-in-the-Box clown gifted to a lonely boy named Isaac by a guardian angel. This gift was meant to be comforting, but eventually Jack was isolated by his friend Isaac, and this turned him into a twisted and monochromatic villain. Isaac's problematic childhood with Jack turned him into a serial killer. But as fate would have it, he was gutted and killed by Jack in the same torture chamber that he brought his victims to. That's the backstory of Laughing Jack. Fast forward to the modern era. Jack is a demonic clown with matte black, scraggly hair, pale white skin, and stark white eyes ringed in black, wearing a black and white clown suit. He has arms so long that they drag behind him as he moves, and a sinister grin stitched in permanent terror. He finds his latest victim in James and pretends to be his imaginary friend. Jack manipulates James and turns his life into a nightmare. He guts a dog to stuff it with candy, pins James to the wall to remove his eyes, tongue, and teeth, and manipulates James's mom to kill her son. Jack has many stories. In some, he approaches the victims with a "pop goes the weasel" sound, and in others, he owns a haunted carnival. But what's most terrifying is that people seem to have had real-life encounters with this entity. In Indiana, a 12-year-old girl stabbed and killed her stepmother, set fire to their home, and claimed that Laughing Jack had told her to do so. 9. The Expressionless. It's June 1972, and a woman arrives at the Cedars-Sinai Hospital wearing a white gown drenched in blood. Nothing weird about that, right? After all, it's a hospital, and bloodied and injured people are a part of the hospital's normal crowd on any fine day. But this was different. The woman seemed gruesome, with no eyebrows, no expressions, and a face lathered in makeup. She clenched a kitten in her mouth, blood still spurting, and as she dropped the kitten, she collapsed on the ground. The staff was almost too scared to meet her gaze. Initially, she's cleaned and prepared for sedation by the staff, which she complies with. However, when the doctor arrives and tries to sedate her, she fights back, levitating off the bed with ghastly strength, and eventually bites the doctor to death with her razor-sharp teeth, which seemed almost impossible to fit inside her mouth. When asked who she was by the doctor, she replies to the dying doctor that she is God. She then goes on a killing spree, and the only surviving staff member dubs the creature the Expressionless. After the massacre, the entity vanishes without a trace. This story taps into deep-seated terror, the uncanny mannequin-perfect visage confronting raw, feral violence. It explores how humanity reacts when something both eerily serene and monstrously unpredictable invades a place of safety and healing. 10. The Backrooms. Imagine you suddenly no-clip out of reality, like in a video game, and find yourself in an endless maze of empty, yellow-tinged rooms. The Backrooms is a modern urban legend sparked by a single unsettling photograph posted in 4chan's X, a paranormal forum, in 2019. You awaken in level 0. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. A damp carpet smells stale, and plain yellow wallpaper stretches across sterile hallways and rooms stretching up to 600 million square miles. There's no exit, only a quiet sense that something unseen is watching. The interesting thing about the backrooms is that its fear originates from liminal spaces. That is, places that seem to be perfectly ordinary but become extremely eerie when empty. So being trapped in a place like this certainly messes with people's minds, especially when you land in this cursed place out of nowhere like a glitch in reality. Even worse, such spaces bring out a primal fear that you are not alone. As the myth grew, fans added levels, twisting, corrupted versions of reality populated by hostile entities and impossible geometry. It turned into a sandbox horror universe. Short films, indie games, ARGs, and vlogs. The Backrooms is a multi-level horror universe with unstable power, the noise of industry machinery in Level 1, and hot and dangerous, endless boiler rooms in Level 2. The levels become progressively bizarre, with things that sometimes defy physics. Kane Pixel's found footage series, launched on YouTube in 2022, cemented the status of this lore. These tapes showed people slipping into this hellish world, hunted by unknown creatures. This inspired Atomic Monster and A24 to develop a feature film about the Backrooms. This creepypasta opens up a discussion on the larger mythos of a parallel universe. Marvelous verdict. So, are you scared yet? Well, you may not be now, but once you've read these, one thing is for certain. You'll never look at an empty hallway, a glitchy game, or a friendly smile quite the same way again. What makes these creepypastas so terrifying isn't just the supernatural elements, it's how plausible and real they often feel. They thrive on ambiguity, letting your imagination fill in the gaps until the horror feels personal. So remember to keep your lights on when you read these creepypastas. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.